Nick Dutch back on the camera yet again, talking about Occam's razor, because people mention it a hell of a lot on YouTube. They just do. And I want to understand it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to a web page, and I'm going to link that in the sidebar. I think it's that way around, not sure, but never mind. Now, according to what I've got in front of me, Occam's razor is a principle attributed to the 14th century logician and Franciscan friar William Occam. Occam was the village in the English county of Surrey where he was born. Okay, so he's an Englishman. Groovy. Okay. The principle states that entities should not be multiplied unnecessarily. Okay. Sometimes it is quoted in one of its original Latin forms to give it an air of authenticity, and no, I'm not going to try and pronounce them for you. You can just go to the sidebar and you can read them for your little self, okay? Right. In fact, only the first two of these forms appear in his surviving works, and the third was written by a later scholar. William used the principle to justify many conclusions, including the statement that God's existence cannot be deduced by reason alone. Which is interesting, because on YouTube, people use Occam's razor as an anti-theistic statement. And that's not really an anti-theistic statement. It's saying that you can't just use a reason to deduce the existence of God. According to this particular article I'm reading, that particular phrase didn't make the Pope very happy at all. Maybe the Pope was a bit too much of a Bible literalist. Okay, fine. But he's the Pope, you know, he's got his own issues, okay? Alright. Many scientists have adopted or reinvented Occam's razor. I like the word reinvented, because when someone reinvents something, the meaning changes quite dramatically, doesn't it? My argument would be that the version of Occam's razor which is quoted so much by individuals on YouTube is probably a misinterpretation, or an adjustment, shall we say, from the original. Isaac Newton stated the rule, "We are to admit no more causes of natural things than such are both true and sufficient to explain their appearances." Okay, so that makes perfect sense, but Isaac Newton was like an alchemist. He was a bit of a strange weirdo like myself, and did strange, weird, New Agey type stuff, because he was a strange, weird New Ager. He lived a long time ago, but he was a New Ager, okay? You know, get used to it. So I would say that that would be proof that Isaac Newton was bright enough and intelligent enough to be able to sufficiently separate the different compartments of his mind, those which deal with scientific things and those which deal with religious things, because essentially he's making a natural science type statement there. But that's not really totally anti-theistic, unless of course the theist in question was incredibly super sensitive, which is possible. This article then goes on to say, the most useful statement for the principle for scientists is, when you have two competing theories to make exactly the same predictions, the simpler one is the better. Which is interesting, but is it actually true? It depends upon your requirements. If you actually need to have a complex model of the way the world works for complex equations, theories, or mechanisms, for instance, then surely you actually need to use a slightly more complex model. Okay, so simpler is not always better. Simpler could be more useful, but simple has to be simple within the right context. And the context will be dependent upon your needs. So it's not really a very good statement, is it? Okay. It says here, in physics we use the razor to shave away metaphysical concepts. And as I've already pointed out, I mean, it may be quite down to earth, this, the idea that Newton came out with, but Newton was a metaphysician, as well as a natural scientist. But is weeding out metaphysical concepts always appropriate? Well, it depends upon what you're trying to achieve. It depends upon the context. Alright, I mean, I could go on and just read out just more stuff from here. But I would disagree with this concept of Occam's razor if Occam's razor is saying just choose the simplest, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, the context in which Occam's razor is used, especially on YouTube, is in debates against creationists or Bible literalists. And firstly, it's a bit daft to try and debate with a Bible literalist anyway, so shame on you, because they're with the fairies. Okay. But, and this is my opinion, and it is just an opinion, okay, because humans are complex things. They work in complex ways. So can you actually apply a simple model of the world to the workings of a human mind or a human being? Basically, no, you can't. Let's just have a quick look at another model of the way the world works. Now, if you're one of these natural scientists who believes very heavily in your interpretation of Occam's razor, your interpretation, not mine, okay, you will probably say that daydreaming is a bad thing. You will probably say that a person who kneels in prayer, for instance, is essentially doing a form of daydreaming, just talking to an imaginary figure. Let's see what this book says. Page 68. Daydreaming your future reality. Contrary to what your teachers may have told you when they saw you gazing out of the classroom window, allowing your mind to wander can be a powerful first step in achieving your goals. Ooh, doesn't that go against Occam's razor the way that you understand it? Doesn't it? By using the techniques described in the earlier sections of this chapter, you can discover what your heart's desire is and take the first steps towards achieving it, or by daydreaming. So, I mean, there's some quite complex instructions here, quite in-depth ways of looking at the world. It's not simple. It's not the simplest model. But this book contains some quite interesting, powerful ways of using your mind in a different way to help you to achieve some results. And it rests upon symbolism and the subconscious mind, daydreaming, which is like a form of auto-hypnosis, basically. And a lot of things, which a lot of people here on YouTube who go on about the Occam's razor, the wonderful Occam's razor, would actually disapprove of. But yet here we have a way of looking at the world which goes contrary to Occam's razor, the way that you understand it, and uses concepts which actually verge on the metaphysical, which goes against this particular article's interpretation of how physicists use Occam's razor. Now, most human beings are not physicists, and the arguments from physics cannot be applied to your average human being. I mean, let's very quickly, before I run out of time, provide a hypothetical example. Let's say an individual wants to use their neurolinguistic programming skills to the best of their advantage. Let's say they choose to enter into a meditative trance-like state of mind. They go a bit daydreamy, just as it says there. But they create in their mind's eye, a being, an entity. And they build up a set of ideas, over many years maybe, as to what this entity could do or could be. And they give this entity an instruction or a command or a request. Change the way I think about this particular task so I can do it better, or help me to deal emotionally with this particular problem. And maybe over a period of time, this particular entity starts fulfilling the will of the individual. Now, that type of activity is in keeping with psychological science and neurolinguistic programming, but that particular technique is called prayer and religion, and it works through increasing the number of entities. And it actually works through that method. So, Occam's razor, the way that a lot of people here on YouTube use it, is actually incorrect when dealing with human beings living their human lives. Anyway, Nick Dutch signing out for now.